thing, Julia. I need to speak with Lenny.
You mean the patient?
Of course, yes, Leonard.
Is he a patient of yours?
Well...
In any case, I don't know his whereabouts. Sorry. Leonard can be somewhat unpredictable. Just go look around.
I have nothing else to say about this.
Fine by me. If that's all, I'll get back to work.
So, there might be some information I can recover on the second floor.
I told you to stay away from the upper floors.
That's right. My bad.
Don't make me call Bruno.
I would like to look into the history of a patient called Bertrand.
Bertrand. That does ring a bell. Sorry, I'm not really sure about other patients at the Institute. I know there's a few, namely Leonard, but perhaps Dr. Miller knows more.
This topic is giving me a headache.
Yeah, me too.
Do you know why the Institute was shut down in the first place?
No, not really. I remember reading that it was quite sudden. It was all over the news back then, but the controversy died down quickly. Were you here when that happened?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. It seems like it was a grave matter. I'd have remembered about that.
Anyway, it's old history now.
Yeah, I guess so. Are you aware of any previous construction work on the building? You know, before the upcoming renovations.
Yes, I do remember hearing about efforts to turn the Kirkbride layout into a modernized configuration of smaller buildings. Unity...
I'm not sure we're in Unity.
Unit. That's it. The unit system.
Interesting. And I guess those construction plans were never finalized?
Well, I guess not. They were strange days, the place was falling apart, budget issues too.
I see. Thank you. So, I assume the new crew of workers arriving tomorrow will continue with the unit system direction.
That's my understanding.
They're gonna turn this place upside down.
Yeah. This dust is going to kill me.
This topic is giving me a headache.
Yeah, me too.
Do you know of anyone called Crawford?
No, I'm sorry.
I have nothing else to say about this.
Fine by me. If that's all, I'll get back to work.
That's all for now. I'll be back. interrupting something?
Who are you?
I'm a former member of the Institute. I came here tonight to look into some docket.
Well, this is highly irregular. Did Julia let you in? I'll need to have a word with her. As you can see, the building is not in a condition for you to go anywhere you please.
Oh, but I'm only going to the allowed areas.
This area is not allowed.
Sorry, my mistake. But would you mind if I asked you some questions?
I was in the middle of something important, but go ahead.
I assume you are...
I'm the new director of the Institute, Dr. Ambrose Miller. My purpose here is to honor the vision of my former colleague, Dr. Walter Hanwell.
Pleased to meet you. Julia seems to be a nice member of the new Hanwell family.
Our new receptionist. I don't have much to say. I just met her earlier this morning.
She's doing a fine job. Must be difficult putting a nice face to all this filth.
Filth?
I'm sorry, I mean, let's talk about something else. So, you're the famous Dr. Miller.
Famous? Not quite. At least not around these parts. I'm just a humble servant who wishes to continue with Walter's grandiose dreams.
How so?
As soon as I heard this establishment was ceasing operations, I made arrangements to be transferred here, hopefully continue Walter's work. My connection in the field of medicine across the years proved valuable, as here I find myself as the new director in charge of this reopening.
You seem quite attached to this building and its history.
I wasn't involved in those days, just acquainted with the philosophy of Hanwell Institute. The hospital used to be an illustrious example of what the will of man can accomplish. All I'm doing here is picking up the pieces and fulfilling that dream.
There's one more.
Please, enough chatter. I have work to do.
About Dr. Ebesbaker.
The therapist?
Yes, I'm curious about her role at the Institute.
She was well positioned in the ranks at Hanwell, respected career and all. But if you ask me, she was a failure.
So you think Dr. Ebesbaker was part of the reason why the Institute ceased operations?
No, at least not just her, but she was another component in the equation. I believe her foolish rivalry with Hawthorne distracted Walter from a greater purpose. And Hawthorne, well, he wasn't a saint of my devotion either.
About this,
we have said all there was to say on the topic.
do you know Bruno?
Of course I know Bruno. He's our security guard.
Is there anything of interest you could tell me about him?
Not really. He's just a security guard.
But he's working in your establishment and contributes to a greater goal. You can't possibly operate this place without security.
Look, if you want to form a union with Bruno, be my guest. I need to keep working with this dangerous chemical.
Why such intolerance?
I have a highly dangerous chemical right here.
Fine. Have you seen a patient wandering around?
The one who's cleaning the rooms? Yes, Leonard, I believe.
That's who I mean, yes. Is it safe to speak with him?
Certainly. Perfectly safe, otherwise we wouldn't allow him to roam freely. I'm not familiar with his case, though. We are simply continuing with the same treatment he had in the past.
Which is?
He likes to help. How can we say no?
There's one more.
Please, enough chatter. I have work to do.
Does the name Crawford ring a bell?
Not in the least.
About this,
we have said all there was to say on the topic.
so, I assume you were acquainted with Walter Hanwell.
Quite so. Walter was a friend. We maintained ample correspondence over the years. Many subjects, both from the field of medicine and life itself, were our common interest. Many times I toyed with the idea of coming here to work with him. Alas, fate had a different plan for us.
What do you mean?
Well, the circumstances you're obviously familiar with. I was finally prepping myself for a greatly belated visit when all of a sudden the institute shut down. Walter had been a friend in writing for many years, yet regrettably I never got to know him in person.
It's odd that you were such a close friend with Dr. Hanwell, yet only exchanged letters.
I don't see what's so odd about that. Some people prefer the expression and flair of the written word, especially someone as enlightened as Walter was. We never even spoke on the telephone. Always preferred the intimacy of the prose. You see, Walter was a very reserved fellow. He didn't like public appearances, nor to be photographed, and I respected that. In a way, it made our relationship more intriguing. We connected down to the purest level, our thoughts.
I forgot to ask something else.
I'm sorry, but I really need to concentrate.
Don't you think it's a bit rash to bring in patients under such deplorable conditions?
I don't like your accusing tone. There's an ongoing housing crisis for mental patients. Would you rather have them tossed into the streets?
That's not what I meant.
Be that as it may, I'm not proud of the circumstances surrounding this reopening, but we have an obligation to provide shelter for these patients. It's a temporary measure.
What kind of patients are you currently admitting?
Mostly low-risk ones, because we don't have enough security at the moment. There's only one high-risk patient that I know of in the establishment tonight.
And those are patients from other mental hospitals, which no longer have room for them?
That is the plan, although we are prioritizing patients who were previously admitted to Hanwell. When the institute shut down, all of a sudden, it aggravated an already serious housing crisis for mental health patients.
What condition would you say can lead to chronic hallucinations?
In my experience, extreme stress. For example, panic attacks. Abuse of illegal drugs and other substances too. But most likely it would be something related to the brain, a physical problem, such as an imbalance of neurotransmitters. Schizophrenia can cause hallucinations as well.
Thank you for the thorough explanation. I'm curious about something. When it comes to hallucinations...
You seem to be particularly interested in this topic.
It's for my research.
Well, go on then.
What would be a solution? For them, I mean, to stop the hallucinations.
That's one broad question. For starters, drugs which counterbalance the improper chemistry between serotonin, dopamine, and glutamate in the brain. And that doesn't work all the time. If it's something more serious, like a brain tumor...
What?
Extirpation. But it's extremely risky. Even if the surgery is successful, the patient is at risk of dying or facing crippling side effects.
What if I told you I have a strange urge to look for candles?
I would say you have a keen sense of adventure. Have you looked in the attic yet?
Not yet.
If you can't find some candles there, I'll eat my hat.
You'll eat your whole closet. Why did Hanwell shut down all of a sudden? Just one more thing. Would you say it's possible that, amid all the chaos, patients were wrongfully discharged?
I know patients were relocated from one institute to the other, as is the current case for our reopening.
Yet it's possible.
Yes, of course, it's very possible. The glorious Hanwell Institute may have let loose dangerous lunatics in the streets amid a media circus. Satisfied now?
Sure. Let's drop the subject. Do you know anything about the construction below?
I'm aware of renovation plans that didn't come to fruition. The structure of the building was typical Kirkbride. Since its inception, a style which became dated over time. Mind you, this was true of all mental hospitals of this area. All Kirkbride establishments were forced to change or perish.
Why this whole fascination with the Kirkbride architecture?
You could say that Walter was a romantic, too attached to the old ways. He erected this building quite late in his lifetime, when the Kirkbride design was already beginning to exhibit its flaws, and he paid a price for it.
What I don't understand is the purpose of digging in the basement.
It makes perfect sense. That's typically how the migration of the so-called unit system worked. Underground tunnels.
I'm wondering how a network of underground tunnels is so attached to the concept of a unit system.
To begin with, the unit system is a term that didn't catch on. It was meant to convey the notion of units of buildings, concerned with a single aspect for the everyday operation of a mental institute. One building for administrative offices, another for surgical interventions, then male and female infirmaries separated, and so on. The hospital border in Buenos Aires is a good example of such a system of buildings.
I forgot to ask something else.
I'm sorry, but I really need to concentrate.
I'm looking for information on a patient called Bertrand.
Bertrand is one from the old group, right?
I believe so. I've seen footage of him in the therapy room.
Footage? Intriguing. I'll have to take a look at that. But yes, of course he sounds familiar. He's here tonight.
What do you mean, here? Physically?
Physically? What are you, a ghost hunter? Of course, in flesh and blood. He's one of the patients being relocated.
This is an incredible development. Where can I see him?
I don't have such details. All I know is that he's in the same cell where he used to be.
Have you seen the patient Lenny around?
Lenny? Ah, yes, you mean Leonard. Yes, I believe he's somewhere on this floor, cleaning a corridor.
Thank you. The reason I'm here is to research the older history of the Institute, from its heyday until the strange circumstances of its collapse.
As you can imagine, that's not a topic we like to discuss here. We prefer to look forward, not back in the past.
Well, as the new director, aren't you interested in what happened?
That remark seems slightly insulting.
I didn't mean to.
Look, it was all a sorry episode that none of us are proud of. And those responsible have long since been apprehended. And that's the end of it.
Just one more question about the past.
Why are you so interested in learning about the past?
Well, I was here in the Institute around that time, but I don't quite recall all the events that transpired. Those unfortunate circumstances deeply affected me, and I must understand why.
What was your role in the Institute?
I used to be with patients most of the time.
This is all becoming a waste of my time. What was the question?
Were you acquainted with the Institute back in those days?
Only tangentially. This is my first time here.
All right.
And that concludes this conversation.
Sorry, where was Bertrand's cell?
As I told you, I don't know the exact cell number, only it's the same one where he used to be.
All right. Thank you. I'll be on my way. Lenny, I've been in the basement. You were right.
Really?
Yes, I was there before. And you too. I had this memory. We were working together in some kind of construction project. What were we doing down there?
I don't recall. Everything is so fuzzy.
Lenny, you have to make an effort. This is important for our sakes.
I don't want to, please. I don't want to remember. It hurts.
Okay, don't worry, Lenny. Let's try something else. Lenny, what happened to us in the basement?
I don't know. I have too much work to do.
Can't you...
No, I don't want to talk about the basement.
Okay. I've learned that Bertrand, a former patient of the Institute like you and me, is here, and I'm gonna pay him a visit.
I hope he's all right.
I hope so too, Lenny. We both need answers. Did you hear anything else about this?
No.
My vision in the basement was the first time I felt like I was witnessing something relevant. You know, with a meaning. A moment that actually happened. Did you hear anything else about this?
No.
Nothing else comes to mind?
I don't want to think about that anymore.
Is there anything else you can tell me about this?
No, I'm sorry.
It's incredible, but Bertrand, another patient from that time, like you and me, is here too. Don't you feel like this is all a strange coincidence?
I couldn't say. We all belong here. It's not a surprise to me.
Did you hear anything else about this?
No.
Did you ever meet the former director of the Institute, Walter Hanwell?
I'm not sure. I saw many people walking around in the Institute in the past, but no one ever told me who Hanwell was.
Are you familiar with the name Crawford?
Right, Crawford. He was in our group with Dr. Ann. He made many jokes. So funny. I laughed a lot with him. But he also had a scary look on his face. Sometimes he just went crazy.
Do you know what happened to him?
No. One day, he just disappeared.
Is there anything else you can tell me about this?
No, I'm sorry.
Did you hear anything else about this?
No.
Did you hear anything else about this?
No.
See you around, Lenny. forgot to ask you something. Is there anything you can tell me about Dr. Hanwell?
Well, he was an authority in the field of mental health. He basically built this whole place from the ground up.
What a remarkable accomplishment.
But there's little information about Dr. Hanwell himself. He wasn't keen on giving interviews or showing himself in public. Only those who are closely acquainted or have been treated by Dr. Hanwell can claim to know him personally.
A notable celebrity indeed. I have nothing else to say about this.
Fine by me. If that's all, I'll get back to work.
Have you heard anything about underground tunnels?
That sounds spookier than it is. Underground tunnels are very common in mental hospitals.
How so?
Well, not in this particular single building layout. Modern mental health institutions have a whole different design, which is what they're planning to create here. They're comprised of a series of smaller buildings, and underground tunnels connecting them are not uncommon.
Wow, you learn something new every day. I have nothing else to say about this.
Fine by me. If that's all, I'll get back to work.
There might be a patient called Bertrand who used to be at the Institute back in its heyday.
There's Leonard, who seems to have been here forever, but I wasn't aware of any Bertrand.
Still, this is quite exciting.
If you say so.
I don't think we have anything else to discuss.
Thank you for being considerate. There's so much I need to do.
Turns out this patient Bertrand is back at the Institute, and he might be relevant to my research.
That's interesting. What are you planning to do?
I would like to pay him a visit, but I'm not quite sure where his cell is.
Well, no patients are on the upper floors that I know of. The whole female wing remains closed for renovations, so your only option is the male low-risk wing on this floor.
All right, thank you. See you later, Julia.